Hello, everyone, and welcome to BodyBags. I'll be your reviewer for today. I'm Lonnie from Tats, and I just thought it would be kind of interesting and fun if, for the month of June, that I would kind of dive into some of these, Stephen King miniseries that have been done for television and stuff, or as like Stephen King likes to call them, novels for television. And yeah, I just thought it'd be kind of interesting to take a look into some of these, and these are things that haven't been done on BodyBags before, at least not that I'm aware of. And sorry, this one. What year was this? This was I don't remember. 2001, I think. Anyway, the movie that we're going to be talking about today is the miniseries of Stephen King's Rose Red. And here we go. Really cool haunted house story. And at first, though, I got to kind of give you a little bit of backstory. But sorry, my tablet's going off. But yeah, I got to give you a tiny little bit of backstory. So, once upon a time, Steven Spielberg approached Stephen King and said, "Hey, I want to do like the scariest haunted house movie ever, and I want you to write it for me." And Stephen King was like, "Well, I'll take a shot at it." And Stephen King drew inspiration from two very, strong inspiration from two sources. Number one, he drew inspiration from Shirley Jackson's novel, The Haunting of Hill House. And number two, he drew inspiration from the Winchester Mansion out in California. And so he worked on a story and everything, and just unfortunately, the collaboration between King and Spielberg never really happened, but, King still had the story and everything. And then, into the, from the 90s into the 2000s, especially after King had these really big, television miniseries hits. He had It, that was a big hit. The Stand, that was a big hit. So he was getting into this position where pretty much ABC was like, "Hey, anything you want to do, we're interested in." And, King was like, "Well, could do some adaptations of some stuff." And there was some adaptations of his movies or his books. Like Desperation was one, Bag of Bones is another. Bag of Bones is one I want to cover here soon. But he also decided, hey, I kind of like the idea of doing, original stories for television, and write them and structure them in such a way that it feels like a novel, you know. And so he started coming up with this idea of novels for television. And one of the things that he did the remake of The Shining, which I reviewed that a long time ago on the channel. And he did Storm of the Century, and he was like, "Hey, I'm digging this idea of doing these more original, stories instead of just adapting all my books and everything. I really dig doing these original stories, which unfortunately seems like that's definitely slowed down. But so he decided, well, I'm going to take this haunted house story and I'm going to, do this as a novel for television. So we got Rose Red, directed by Craig Baxley, who directed Storm of the Century for King. And the story is about Ellen Rimbauer, who she marries this man, John Rimbauer, and he builds this house for her, and she calls the house Rose Red. And so, when they go to this house, there's a lot of very spooky stuff going on. There's kind of like, even during the building of the house, there's like, some really odd happenings, like a man becomes possessed and out of anger shoots the foreman who's constructing the house and things. And there are disappearances in the house and all this kind of stuff. And similar to how Sarah Winchester had her seance, Ellen Rimbauer does a seance, and she's told that they have to keep building on the house, otherwise, evil forces are, gonna, really mess things up. And so throughout the course of her life, her husband John dies mysteriously. Let's see here. Her daughter April disappears and nobody can find her, and so on. And throughout, similar to Sarah Winchester, Ellen Rimbauer, spends her entire life and John Rimbauer's fortune in building this house and continuing to build on it and everything else until she died. And then when she people are just like, we don't know what happened to her. She just kind of disappeared or whatever, just never to be seen again. So anyway, so now Joyce Reardon, played by Nancy Travis, you could remember from shows like I think it was Becker and things like that. So anyway, she decides like, hey, I want to do an investigation into this house, Rose Red, and I know a lot of the backstory and everything. And it turns out she's in a relationship with Steven Rimbauer, played by Matt Keeslar. You might remember from the Masters of Horror episode Family, directed by John Landis. And so they're in a relationship together, and he just wants to sell the house. He wants it demolished and everything else. And, he's just like, I don't like this place and all this. Ooh, it's awful. I just want to be rid of it. And so Joyce, she decides she's going to assemble a team. And there's, what was his name? Emery, played by Matt Ross, who you remember from American Psycho. He's, what was it? He's a post-cognitive, I think, and, or precognitive, whatever. I'm sorry, I get those confused, but I'm not trying to make fun of the situation, but he's like receiving these warnings, like he sees like, he opens up his refrigerator, everything's covered in blood and stuff, and he's, he has a mother who the problem is like he has a mother who's like, she's always out spending money all the time and everything else. She can't control her spending. She's, going ape with credit cards and stuff like this, and so she's basically using him as kind of a cash cow so she can make money so she can keep buying things and all this stuff. So it's like every time he's, so he's seeing like, like dead rotting corpses and stuff like this. And he keeps saying the same thing. It's like, hey, save the warnings for someone who's not broke. And then we have Julian Sands, from Warlock and many great movies. And, he's fantastic in this. You have Kevin Teague, you remember from the old TV show, Emergency and stuff. You have a name cast in here. You have Emily Deschanel, from Bones, the TV show Bones. Melanie Linsky from, Castle Rock and, movies like XX, Heavenly Creatures. She was in that. And you have a lot of, name talent in this movie. And so anyway, so she puts together this team and they decide that they're going to go and investigate. They're going to stay a weekend in this house. And you have the late David Duke, who you remember from Rawhead Rex. He's kind of this big naysayer, and he's like, he and Joyce are always like butting heads because, he's very much a skeptic. He doesn't believe in ghosts. He doesn't believe in, anything like that. And so, the two of them are just kind of at each other's throats, and he's bound and determined. He wants to make Joyce look like a fool and run her out of the college that they work at and stuff like that. And so he decides he's going to send this, guy in to try to take pictures and everything else and try to make him look unprofessional so that he can get Joyce fired. And then, of course, things are not going well. But there's this young girl, Annie, who has very much like a Carrie kind of like ability. There's definitely a strong connection to Carrie in this, And you could even kind of sit there and say, some of these characters may even have this little thing called The Shining, which King has, definitely used that over and over again in other stories. But, so anyway, so they get, this little girl, Annie, Joyce is like, this girl is the key. She will unlock Rose Red, the mysteries that have gone on in this place and everything. We'll find out what happened. We'll find out what happened to Ellen Rimbauer. We'll find out what happens when people go in this house and they disappear. And they've been doing like, tours and stuff of the house, similar like the Winchester Mansion, only the difference is like, people go into this house, they don't come out. So they go and they get the funding and everything. They go spend a weekend in this place, and there's a lot of exposition. So you got to get ready for that. You got to remember, this movie is like 4 hours and 14 minutes. Okay. And that's without the commercials and stuff. Okay. So yeah, 254 minutes. So there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of exposition. So it was broken up into 3 parts. And the first part is really kind of the exposition, kind of setting things up and everything else. And then you get to the second part where it's kind of more like, kind of like a really like tightening the noose and everything and trying to, setting things, kind of getting things in motion and all this kind of stuff. And then by the third part is where all hell breaks loose. And, so it's kind of like, you do get some kind of scary, eerie things that happen in the first couple of parts. Yeah, the second part has some spooky parts, but it's kind of the third part is really where, the whole thing just kind of really takes off and goes insane. And then we kind of realize that the character of Steven Rimbauer, he's similar to he's similar to kind of Nell from The Haunting, in that the forces inside the house are trying to keep him there because he is a Rimbauer and trying to keep him from ever leaving, and so he has to try to resist the house and all this kind of stuff. And but anyway, overall, yeah, this really is it's really a good story. Is it the scariest haunted house movie of all time? No, but it's a really well done story, and it's kind of nice because there's not really a book to compare this to, even though after this came out and it was a decent ratings hit, I believe, they did, King authorized a book, called The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer to come out. And then they turned around, they subsequently did kind of a prequel TV movie called The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, which you could check that out. But honestly, if you've seen this, you don't really need to, because the movie just kind of recites a lot of the same stuff that's said in here, kind of in the first part of the miniseries, where it's just reciting a lot of the exposition and story building and everything else. So you kind of just don't really need that. I mean, yeah, it's kind of, I have that on DVD, and it's kind of cool to have it as a companion piece to Rose Red. It's just not really necessary. You just don't really need that, because this here King does a really good job of creating this world and setting it up, so that you don't really need, all this extra stuff coming into it. You get the idea. Like that TV movie just kind of expands on it a little bit more. That's about it, and but yeah, I definitely say, like, unfortunately, like I said, we haven't really gotten too many of these original, King stories for television. They, every once in a while we'll get an adaptation, and unfortunately, most of the time they're horrible. Like Under the Dome, that was god awful. The book was really good, but the miniseries or the TV series was just horrendous. Then what was it? The Outsider. The miniseries was good, but I haven't read the book, so I can't really compare it to that. Then, if you remember a while back, I reviewed The Stand from like 2020. That was god awful. That was terrible. Compared to the 1994 miniseries, that was terrible. And no, not just because Amber Heard was in it. It was a terrible series overall. But yeah, just unfortunately, we haven't gotten too many more of these original like TV series done by King. But it'd be kind of nice if we could get some more. But Rose Red, I would definitely say it's a good. If you like. A good haunted house story, that, and, a story that takes time to, build the world and the myth around it and everything else, then yeah, Rose Red really is a good story. And oh, by the way, if you're, just word of warning, okay, this is out of print pretty much now. So if you're ever out, at, like a pawn shop or a thrift store or anything like that, if you could see this and get it for like, a couple of bucks or something, I highly recommend you snag it, because this here is like, I've seen it. It's, I've got 2 copies of this actually, because, it's like now, like I said, it's out of print, and, it goes for stupid amounts of money. I've gone into record stores and stuff like that, and I've seen this sell for, really, I think I saw one time it sell for upwards of $60. So I would say, yeah, if you're ever in like a pawn shop or a thrift store or something like this, if you find a copy of this in decent condition, you can get it for a couple of bucks. I highly recommend you jump on it, because it is very rare. Now it's out of print and everything else. So, but yeah, I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of, King's, you're a fan of Stephen King, you're a fan of good ghost stories, if you're a fan of The Haunting and all this other kind of stuff, I would definitely say give Rose Red a shot. It's, but just make sure you got time on your hands, because like I said, this movie's over 4 hours long, but it's definitely worth it. And it's paced well enough that it does keep your interest. At least I feel it does. So anyway, so that's it. Yeah. So if anybody took the time to watch this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a like. If you haven't already, go and subscribe to the BodyBags channel. There's a different video, one for every day of the week. I'm the Saturday reviewer. Everybody's doing really good stuff. We have a great bunch of guys on the show, and we got some more fun theme weeks and everything else. I got something good for 1979. Unfortunately, it's like, it's like I was going to try to keep up with my Stephen King miniseries. I was going to try to do Salem's Lot, but that's been done before, so it is what it is. So, but I got something good for next week for 1979. I think you're going to like it. So please come back and That's it, everybody. Take care. Have a good night, and I'll see you later.